No help is coming for victims of Australia's deadliest medical scandal, hepatitis C, contaminated blood transfusions and blood products. Tens of thousands of Australians are infected and affected by this scandal, and we've been betrayed. And today is a message for those people and organisations and authorities that betrayed us. G'day, Charles Mackenzie, President of Infected Blood Australia, with a message today to the people that have betrayed us. To Australia's Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, and to Australia's Health Minister, Greg Hunt, your cover-up of Australia's deadliest medical scandal, Infected Blood, is actually doing damage to our group right now, and it's actually hastened deaths. Right across our group, a group of survivors and people who care for survivors of Australia's deadliest medical scandal, contaminated blood, we have cancer right throughout our group. This is cancer because hepatitis C is a leading cause of cancer, a leading cause of liver cancer. And so many people in our group have had hepatitis C. Even if they'd been treated, they had these grueling treatments. In some cases, it took like 18 months out of their lives and the treatments were unsuccessful and they had to try again and try again. This has been their life story for 30 years. And unfortunately, these treatments have not stopped the cancer, okay? So we have people dying today, and we've tried very, very hard to get help. We've tried to get help from the British authorities because they are involved in this scandal down here as well. We've tried to get help from this infected blood inquiry in the United Kingdom that I'm a witness of. I made a statement in good faith to them. I think it was 16 months ago. And yeah, it's still not published, okay? So I don't know if it ever will be. I'm starting to have, I'm asking questions now. Okay, so I don't think as a campaign we're going to be successful in saving everyone in our group. Okay, so the problem with that is that it causes us immense distress. Okay, it causes me, real problems because I'm on the front line of this. I have to take the calls. I have to talk to people. I have to deal with the reality here, and the reality is that, look, we are victims of a scandal so huge that no help is coming. And the reason why no help is coming is if Australia's Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, acknowledges that children with this bleeding disorder, haemophilia, or other patients were knowingly given contaminated blood, which we can prove, it's completely provable. There's no doubt now. If you go to infectedbloodaustralia.com, go to the section, the evidence they didn't want you to see, and you'll see that authorities were treating blood supplies and medicine like the Wild West. Okay, it's the Wild West down here in Australia. Okay, tens of thousands of victims acquire deadly viruses through the blood supply. Women having children who are given blood to help speed recovery. Haemophiliacs who in many cases didn't even need blood to survive. They were given it as a recommendation by, their doctors or whatever. Bang, it's ended lives. It's just destroyed everyone. And there are people who've lost, multi-million-dollar homes, multi-million-dollar careers because they didn't expect this was coming. There were people who had elective surgery who didn't even think that there would ever be a risk because they weren't told there was a risk. There were people that went for years not knowing what was wrong with them, and they lost their marriages, their jobs and everything, and they were undiagnosed, okay? And they were written up as being mentally ill, and then years later, and often when it's too late, it was discovered that they were actually contaminated blood victims. And these are women that lost their whole families, okay? And their husbands left them thinking they were bad wives, bad partners. Our group's full of that. This is the worst and most despicable crime that's ever happened in medical history in Australia. Yeah, it is. And there's no help coming, okay? No help's coming. Because if they acknowledge the help, people will probably go to jail because it means it actually happened, okay? So we're inconvenient witnesses in our group. And as President of Infected Blood Australia, I've done a lot of videos appealing for help. We've written to every politician, and not one politician has come back. We have people like Malcolm Roberts, Senator Malcolm Roberts. He talks a good talk, doesn't he? You hear him do lots of speeches about being, wanting the best for Australia and all the rest of it. Yeah, we wrote to him. Didn't even reply. Doesn't even care. Okay, it's all people just using social media and using these platforms to wave the Australian flag. Okay, and say that they're for us and give these great speeches. Okay, but collecting our money. That's what you find. It's basically they collect our taxes, yeah, but they haven't got our backs. How is it that victims of Australia's deadliest medical scandal can't get help? This scandal happened all around the world before the 2000s. Canada gets help, Ireland gets help, Australia gets help. The UK gets help, but we definitely don't get helped. Okay? And yet we've got the world's largest blood products company who are implicated. They're worth 140 billion. Okay? And Australia's made billions and billions out of blood. All right? And it's killed tens of thousands of people. It's infected tens of thousands with contaminated blood, and it won't do a thing to help them. Okay? And the same companies that are involved in this, and the same health departments, and the same Prime Minister and the same Health Minister, okay, coerced everybody into jabs, which they've given legal indemnities for, just like they gave legal indemnities for these blood products. And we've got evidence that children were knowingly injected with contaminated blood that gave them HIV, AIDS, and Hep C. And they've been murdered. And there's no investigation, there's never been one. We went to the police in New South Wales, didn't even get back to us. In fact, they went in the media and they told the Red Cross and the media there wouldn't be an investigation before they told me. Yeah, okay. Well, I didn't think that was supposed to happen. Imagine if you gave a police complaint and, you've been assaulted, robbed, raped, whatever the case may be, and the next thing you know, they go and tell the accused before they tell you there won't be an investigation. That's life for a contaminated blood victim or a kid like me who was infected as a child. We have other kids in the group who were given contaminated blood. They're not alive anymore. Okay, they're dead. We have evidence that they were knowingly infected. There's no investigation, there's no help. Okay, there's no help for their families, there's nothing. So all we have is this situation. And as I said, this is a message for the people that betrayed us. And the principal people that betrayed us, it has to be said, apart from the Australian government, of course, apart from the Australian Red Cross Lifeblood, who collected the blood and failed to test the blood properly, and apart from this jab maker and blood products maker, the $140 billion CSL, and apart from the British government, who lied about the safety of their policies, their protocols and their treatments that came down to Australia in 1978 and basically kicked off the scandal. Apart from that, the biggest group that have betrayed us, okay, has to be, I'm looking down at my iPad here, has to be the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. Ita Buttrose, very famous in Australia and very much loved. I'm also a fan of Ita Buttrose. But in 1985, Ita Buttrose is the chair of the ABC, the current chair, a very famous journalist in Australia. But in 1985, she was a blood products promoter, and this is an advertisement, okay? And in that 1985 advertisement, she's saying that the blood supply is safe and reliable and that these blood products have been purified, okay? And these blood products were given to people with bleeding disorders right after they took Ita's advice, including children, and they ended up with the deadly virus hepatitis C. So Ita wasn't telling the truth. How much of that lies behind the ABC's failure to ever report or investigate properly its nation's deadliest medical scandal, contaminated blood? I suspect a fair bit. And then in 2017, we've tried with the ABC's medical reporter for years. This is Sophie Scott, okay? And in 2017, a much loved member of our group, someone I cared for very much, called Jay. Joe was infected as a kid like me. He was a bit younger than me though, so he's infected. He grew up in the time that we were campaigning, and in 2017, Jay was in a bad way, and we needed to get help for Jay, and we couldn't get him that help. And we couldn't get the ABC to do the right thing and speak about the fact that Jay was infected by a contaminated blood product or transfusion as a child. And so Sophie Scott refused to investigate, okay? And we heard recently that the boss of ABC News and Investigations, Gavin Morris, has resigned. And we think it's connected to this. He knows what's coming. Because Sophie Scott, the same year that she refused, she was hosting hepatitis C events. So she won't investigate tens of thousands of Hep C cases through the blood supply, but she would host Hep C events held by the medical organisation in New South Wales who are connected to the cover-up of Australia's deadliest medical scandal, the Kirby Institute. Okay, she was hosting a 2017 World Hepatitis Day. Sophie Scott, okay, so she's basically presenting this idea that Australia's had this great success story with its viruses, treatment, and Hep C, okay? And it's been nothing like that at all. And also, Sophie Scott was associated on that day with this man. This man is called Stuart Loveday. He came from England, and he hastened the deaths of so many in our group because he collected millions of dollars from the Australian taxpayer, purportedly to represent hepatitis C. He was the boss of all things Hep C in this country for decades. And he said that people with the bleeding disorder haemophilia, 2,000 basically people, should not be helped because it would be discrimination against other people with viruses. And we've got evidence that the authorities knew that these products they were giving these haemophiliacs were tainted. It's been proven by this inquiry right now that's going on right now in the UK called the UK Infected Blood Inquiry. But down here in Australia, this man, Stuart Loveday, said if you help haemophiliacs, it's discrimination. Okay, and meanwhile, he collected tens of millions of dollars. And the real reason he said it was discrimination to help people was because it would have affected his budgets, okay? And there's one of his mates from the Kirby Institute, the Corrupt Institute. Do you know the patron of that Kirby Institute, this medical organisation that's covering up Australia's deadliest medical scandal? Their patron is a former High Court judge called Justice Kirby. Now, Justice Kirby is a great man, and most Australians know of Justice Kirby, and I am absolutely convinced that in no way does Justice Kirby know about these conflicts of interests that involve this Kirby Institute that sees people like Stuart Loveday being allowed to speak at events hosted by them, but that man is involved in malfeasance, okay, and corruption. He actually willfully endangered people's lives by saying that haemophiliacs and others should not receive the services and the help that they were demanding, okay, the same sort of help that they would have got over in the UK or Canada or anywhere else. And there you are, 2017 World Hepatitis Day, and there's Sophie Scott, who refused to investigate tens of thousands of hepatitis C infections through the blood supply in 2017. One of our friends died that year, Jay, who we loved. She wouldn't investigate, but here she is on World Hepatitis Day. Well, there you go, ABC. What a terrible thing you've done. I imagine you've had your boss of news and investigations resign. I imagine he did that because he knows that the ABC's correspondent in Europe, Samantha Hawley, published a couple of weeks ago about how Australia's CSL, the company CSL, had potentially infected a chap in Scotland, which meant that he required a liver transplant. And so Australia had sent contaminated blood products throughout the world in the 1980s, 1970s and 1980s. Tens of thousands of the ABC were affected. Where's the investigation, ABC? This is, on these numbers, this is the worst medical scandal in our history by far, and possibly even the world's worst medical scandal, and the ABC won't investigate. And we've got victims dying without help right now, dying without help. This is Ita Buttrose. She was a blood products promoter in the 1980s, but now she won't allow her network to investigate, okay? This is Richard Clarke, the chair of the BBC. Could you imagine the scandal if Richard Clarke was in a similar advertisement and his BBC wouldn't investigate? Okay, what is it about Australia? Why do we get betrayed? And why is no one willing to stand up for us? Come on now, there's thousands of people infected and affected. We get no help. All I get is telephone calls from people where they're dying. There's no help. Okay, this is criminal. And so to the people that betrayed us, although we might die in this group, okay, we're never, ever, ever going to stop pursuing you for what you've done. This is criminal, okay? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it really is. The evidence is there. It's criminal. Children were knowingly harmed. Patients were knowingly given contaminated blood. And Sophie Scott of the ABC won't investigate. And Scott Morrison, Australia's Prime Minister, won't help victims. And Greg Hunt won't help victims. And they won't hold a legal inquiry. And the British won't publish my statement. Okay? So we're all on our own. No help's coming. Okay? We've been betrayed. We need your help. We need a legal investigation like nothing else. Please go to our bio and please support us. We're on our last legs. Scott Morrison, Greg Hunt, you're going to jail for this. You can be sure.